in Ukraine has been going on for more than 500 days. Ukraine has been fighting the Russian aggression with the help of its allies. The West has been providing the country with arms and ammunition, although Ukraine wants more. It also wants to become part of the NATO military alliance. This week, NATO finished its annual summit in the Lithuanian capital of Vilnius. All NATO leaders were present there, along with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The war in Ukraine was one of the key discussions that clouded over the meeting. Ukraine had hopes that it will finally have a roadmap on how it will become a member of the alliance.
Ukraine is not a member of any other union. It wants to be a member of European Union specifically, and specifically wants to be an independent state. The invitation to join NATO is the same. It is a signal.
But the two-day summit was not seen as fruitful for Kyiv, at least not in the beginning. The President Zelenskyy launched an angry trade on social media, calling NATO's failure to give Ukraine a formal invitation or clear timeline for joining the alliance, quote-unquote, absurd. In the tweet, Zelensky's impatience over NATO's slow-moving decision-making process has reportedly irritated U.S. officials enough that they reconsidered Ukraine's invitation to join the alliance. The U.S. has already given Ukraine more than $75 billion in assistance. More recently, the Pentagon announced that they will send the controversial cluster munitions to assist Ukraine. Rebutting the criticism showcased by the Ukrainian president, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said, "The U.S. deserves a degree of gratitude for the billions it has provided for Ukraine's defense." Moreover, the British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace also put forward his frustration. Wallace said that he had warned Ukraine that its international allies were not, quote-unquote, Amazon, and Kyiv needed to show gratitude for weapon donations to persuade Western politicians to give more. Like Washington, London has been one of Kyiv's staunchest supporters. Wallace has warned that Ukraine has to persuade U.S. lawmakers and that whether we like it or not, people want to see gratitude. Following Wallace's statement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy responded to his comments.
We are grateful. Britain is our partner. Maybe the minister wants something special, but it seems to me that we have good relations and we are grateful to the people. And in the end, such support of the people affects the support of any state leadership. That is why I think it is precisely because of such great support for Ukrainian people by the British people, we have such a close relationship.
By the end of the NATO summit on Wednesday, Zelenskyy said that he was returning home from the summit with, quote, a good result. Amid the high tempo of arm transfers to Ukraine, according to the commander of the U.S. Air Force in Europe, the stockpile of U.S. weapons and those of allies are getting, quote, dangerously low. He has also warned that no short-term fixes are on the horizon. He urged fellow NATO members to take a hard look at the status of their weapons stockpile as they continue to arm Ukraine to fight the Russian aggression. Okay, well, for more on this, we are now being joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis from Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us. He is a military expert and, of course, served many years in the military. Lieutenant Colonel, it wasn't just this military commander that said America is running out of weapons stockpiles. President Biden also blurted that out during an interview with CNN just before he left for this European trip. So why doesn't the commander-in-chief unveil a new national effort to expand U.S. weapon productions and its stocks?
Well, yeah, well, here's the situation that we are actually, and have been for months, actually many months. This has been an issue that was identified fairly early in the war, that the volume and the speed with which we were given these, especially these kinds of ammunition in the 155 millimeter and the air defense missile realm, anti-aircraft and anti-missile or anti-tank missiles, were all dangerously low before. And so they actually started in 2022 cutting a lot of new contracts with the Pentagon, with other defense contractors. But the problem is these things have a long lead time. You have to physically build capacity to make more of those things. You have to get trained personnel. And those are kind of fringe skills in the United States and not something you can rapidly ramp up. At best, we're probably producing now 20 to 25,000 shells per month. We were producing 14,000, which is basically 2 days worth of use. back in the day, and Ukraine right now is using about 100,000 or more shells per day across the whole front. And you see there's a significant misbalance there, which is why we're using the cluster munitions now, because we don't have enough of the conventional shells after 2 million have been provided by the U.S. alone. The problem is going to be that very soon Ukraine is going to run short of their daily needs on the battlefield before we can provide it. And that's something that the West doesn't seem to have acknowledged or come up with a plan for, but it's going to fall on the Ukraine to try to figure it out, I'm afraid.
Lieutenant Colonel, in a war game for control of Taiwan, the House Select Committee on China played this year, and the U.S. ran out of long-range anti-ship weapons in a span of 3 days. This was very short, and it was alarming. This is according to the Wall Street Journal, that has an opinion piece titled "America is Running Out of Ammo." So what is Plan B? What is the game plan, considering the fact that China is a threat to Taiwan on the one hand, and then you have Ukraine seemingly fighting a counter-offensive that is unwinnable?
Well, you have certainly hit the nail square on the head there, and those are things I've been worrying about literally for years, and especially in the last 17 months, both in China, or both in the Taiwan region and in the European situation with this war here, is that we simply don't have enough industrial capacity to carry out the foreign policy that we've chosen. And rather than say, okay, these are the means that we have, these are the ends that we'd like to achieve, they don't match, so we're going to have to change our objectives to match what we actually have and maybe have a plan to get there later on. We're not doing that. Unfortunately, we're sticking with the plan we'd like to have, ignoring the actual physical constraints that we have in the ammunition shortfalls. If we're actually called into fighting a war, whether it be getting sucked into this one in Europe or getting drawn into one in the East with China and Taiwan, this is going to end badly for the United States. And I urge the administration to do quickly whatever it takes to bring the ends and means of our policy into balance with one another so that we can safeguard our own national security interests.
Retired Colonel Daniel L. Davis, thank you so much for joining us from Sterling, Virginia, and for your insight. Have a great weekend, sir.
Thank you very much.